Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. This next clip is a segment from the Breaking Through Binging workshop that me and my team recently hosted, and it was too good not to share. So if you want access to all 4 days of the Breaking Through Binging workshop, just message me on Instagram at tips_with_Tony with an I, or make sure you're a part of our free Facebook support group. I will put the link in the show notes to both the Facebook group and my Instagram. And let me know if you missed this and you want access to the replays. It was a great 4 days. Normally, sometimes we do workshops that are do a 1 day masterclass or a 7 day challenge or a 5 day challenge or a week's worth of challenges of just different ideas and things. And this one I thought was great. I think it was like a perfect length. We had 3 days plus a bonus day. And we talked about everything from the difference between binging and emotional eating to mitigate those triggers, to be aware of those triggers, find ways to heal your relationship with food and find balance in your eating habits. And I mean, it was super helpful and super informative. So if you find this next clip helpful of the 7 ways to binge less, then I strongly encourage you to contact me, like I said, on Instagram at tips_with_Tony with an I, or join the free Facebook group and message me on Facebook. If you are not on social media, you can also email me tipswithtony@gmail.com, and I can give you access to the replays. I have a couple mentors and they kind of tell me I should make them expire at a certain time and, not allow, access and kind of just only if those who take advantage of it right away. But I just really want to help you. I genuinely just no need to create any urgency or anything like that. I genuinely just think that even if you're listening to this and it's 2023, right now it's coming out April 2022, but you should still be able to get access to this free, incredibly helpful information. So let me know if you want it. And without further ado, here is the clip. Enjoy. But the reality is that, some days you're going to be hungrier than others, but definitely to have that standard of those 3 balanced meals, but then checking in with your activity levels, your energy levels, incorporate balanced snacks. Depending if you were super active that day, you might need more energy. You might be hungrier, depending on where you're at in your menstrual cycle. If you menstruate, there's different things that are going to dictate your hunger. And the more consistent you are with eating enough, then the less likely you're going to feel like feel the need to binge. And when we binge, we feel the need to restrict, right? So if we're eating constantly and consistently, what did we learn in the first day? Even if we overeat, overeating is still better than a full-blown binge, right? So we have to let go of this fear of overeating. Now, the second part to that is the fear of overeating is usually attached to what? What's our other fear? Could put it in the chat or unmute yourself. What's the other thing we're afraid of? Why would we be afraid to overeat? What's what we think is the quote unquote consequence of overeating? Weight gain. Thank you, Shawana. Yes, gaining weight, right? We have to let go of that. This scale is dictating our progress because the priority is healing your relationship with food. Right. And if you're looking at the scale and it goes up, and meanwhile, you're feeling really confident in your food choices and you haven't binged, and the scale either is not moving or it goes up, you somehow feel like it's quote unquote not working. But the scale will naturally go up and down, and the scale cannot tell you that your relationship with food is healing. Right? So we need to for some of you, need to take a break from the scale. For those of you who are in the 6 months of food freedom program, you get to work with a professional to help when you go on the scale and you might not love it. So when you're actually in the program, it's a little bit of a different approach. However, if we start to notice that when you get on the scale, it's triggering you and it's really unhelpful and it's something we should save for another day, then we won't have you weigh in. But when you're trying to do it on your own, I would strongly encourage you to take a break from the scale and not even have it be as something that you check in on, especially if you would allow it to dictate how you eat that day. If you can use it as a data point and not get so upset over it that you now feel like you need to shift everything about what you're eating and what you're doing, then that's fine. You can keep the scale in play. But I think if you're really struggling with that all or nothing mentality, the binge restrict, the feeling like you're out of control around food, the scale has no purpose of even being there. You're not even ready for it, right? So binge less by eating enough, taking a break from the scale, and what I just mentioned is healing your relationship with food. Why do we think it's when you tell yourself you're not allowed to have something, right? And you shouldn't have something and it's off limits, what do you want to do? How about this? I'm going to tell you all right now, do not think of elephants. Like literally don't think about them. Don't think about elephants. You're not allowed to think about elephants. What are you guys thinking about right now? Thinking about elephants. Why? Because I just mentioned it and I told you not to think about it. And now you're just thinking of the trunk and you're thinking of the big one. And I'm thinking of the little baby one because they're very cute. And you're just thinking about them, right? But so when you tell someone they're not supposed to do something or they shouldn't do something, they think about it more. And now they're like, but why? And it triggers the little kid inside of us. And also because if you think you're not allowed to have a cookie and now you have a cookie and you tell yourself you're not allowed to have it, you're going to overconsume it because you're thinking, oh, well, you know what? I'll start over tomorrow. I'll start over on Monday. But when you know that you can have a cookie every day, it loses its sense of power over you, right? And so that you're no longer needing to fight with this all or nothing in the binge restrict because you know that you can have it whenever you want because you genuinely can, right? If we're focusing on how food makes us feel, that will lead you to where you need. That will lead you to the balance, right? But if you're constantly thinking about how is food going to make me look and neglecting how it makes you feel, we're going to stay stuck in that diet cycle, right? So we have to separate ourselves from focusing on how food is going to make us look and instead focus on how is it going to make me feel, both now and later, in the moment and after, right? It's not the cookie that's the issue. I said this in my TED Talk, I think. I definitely say it on my website a lot. It's not the cookie that's the issue. It's ignoring your hunger cues all day and then binging on an entire box of cookies. That's the issue, right? Or telling yourself you're not allowed to have it. And so you deny it and you deny it and you deny it and deny it. You say no carbs, no sugar, no this, no that, no, I'm not allowed to have it. And then what do? We have it and more so, right? Yeah. And that's the other thing too. Lynn said, if you want to eat the entire chocolate bar, eat the entire chocolate bar instead of a piece. I mean, I think it really comes, if you know that you can, that's what's so crazy. If you know that you can have the chocolate bar, chances are you're probably going to want the whole thing. You might. And if you do, you can do it without guilt and shame because you chose to and you decided to in that moment. But the reality is, once you heal your relationship with food, truly knowing your relationship with food is healed is, guys, honestly, if I opened up my freezer right now, I leave chocolate in the freezer, dark chocolate in the freezer, regular dark chocolate, and I forget it's there. I genuinely forget it's there. But then when I have that inkling of oh, you know what? I could really go for some dark chocolate right now. I open the freezer, I take out a piece and I enjoy it. And then I move on with my day. I don't obsess about it in my head. I'm not thinking about it. I'm not why did I do that? How come I did that? I'm not going back for seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths, and sixths. It's literally just knowing that I can have it. It's always there. So when I choose to have it, it's a really great surprise that I don't have to go out and buy something. It's already there for me and I can enjoy it, right? That's when you know your relationship with food is healing. When I say I can't eat it, I want the bar. Exactly. Yeah. When you say you can't have it, then you want the whole bar. Exactly. But if you say that you can, it loses its power, and there's also too, and I think when there's conceptually understanding this and then genuinely understanding this. So when I say this to some of you, you might be like, okay, like I hear you, but I don't really believe it because you probably haven't practiced it because you're not living it yet. And that's okay because you're still healing. So you really have to lean into trusting us right now, because if you don't believe that it's going to work, you're going to self-sabotage and then you're going to eat the whole bar anyway. But you just have to believe in the process and also know that it takes time. I think someone else said something recently, and I just reminded them that it's all about practice. And I think if you don't think that you can do it and you never give yourself the chance to be able to just have a piece, because a lot of people will say, like, I don't know how to just have a little bit. Well, have you practiced sitting down and eating that little bit mindfully and really enjoying it? And then like going to doing the next thing without obsessing over it? Have you practiced that? Have you practiced going to a party or a restaurant and actually just eating what you wanted in a balanced way without overdoing it, and then coming home and going to sleep and waking up and actually being hungry for breakfast? Because when you do that, I promise you, you're going to be like, wow, not only did I do it, but I felt really great. And because you felt good, that's positive reinforcement. We want to continue to feel good. So now we believe that we can do it. And we also know that it feels good when we do it. So then we continue to do it. And that's how we elicit behavior change. But if you never give yourself that space, if you never allow yourself to practice, if you never give yourself a chance, well, then of course it's not going to work because you don't even believe it. And you're not even giving yourself a fair chance, right? So it all comes from practice. Okay. So the other things we talked about is getting enough rest. So this can be anything from getting quality sleep to sticking to a good sleep routine, right? From a physical standpoint, physically, when we're not getting enough rest, either we're overtraining or not getting enough sleep, physically, we're going to have more cravings and we're going to want more calories because calories are a unit for energy, right? So that's a very basic concept that when we went over. The other thing we talked about is managing stress. I saw some really great comments. That's the thing I get. It may not have been in the Facebook group. I actually think it was someone who was in the 6 months of food freedom program, talking to Christina, her coach, about, how we talked about managing stress, and she was going to start to implement meditation. That really stuck with her. So I'm curious from you guys, from listening back to yesterday's, what did you learn from the managing stress thing that you can do for you? Was it journaling, meditating, delegating, setting boundaries? What are some of those things that you think you're going to implement when it comes to managing stress, right? Because stress is the trigger. So even though I had another call with a client actually earlier today, and it's the second week in a row, he too had a binge. But we called it like a mini binge. It was like this impulsive moment. It felt like someone was coming over, taking over him. He was super stressed out from a very long week, but he was able to stop himself in the minute. So it lasted like a moment. So it was like a mini binge, we called it, because it wasn't a full blown binge, it was a mini binge, and he was able to stop it. However, we noticed the pattern. It was the second week in a row, and it was the second time that it happened after a long week of work. So clearly, he's not putting in enough spaces in the middle of his week to kind of like refresh or regroup, right? So his action item for this week was he noticed that when he goes out for a walk after dinner, he's less likely to fall into that pattern. And it also just helps him at night to just kind of decompress from his day. So that was his action item for this week. And it seems so simple. It's like a walk after dinner, but it's literally going to help to mitigate even the impulse. Because he's like, Tony, I can't believe it's been like 2 months and the voices are they're just not there anymore. So like he rarely has like the voice that's saying, go to the kitchen, overeat. He's like, I don't even hear them. He's like, they used to be so loud. He's like, I barely even hear them. And he's like, now I realize it's not even, the voices aren't there. It's almost like just his body's like going to the kitchen because he's so tired, just wiped out from the week. It's just a normal thing that happens to us, right? And so with this awareness now, there are proactive strategies that we can implement. And so that's something that we're doing. So Lynn said, meditating in my car before I enter school building, even a few minutes. I absolutely love that. Yes. Those transitional periods before work, after work, those are the moments for you to implement any of these things. Okay. Even that gratitude practice when you're brushing your teeth, right? There's plenty of things. And then, Liz said boundaries around social media and news consumption, as well as internal boundaries about when to ruminate on work or other stress, including topics and movement. Absolutely. Yeah, guys, I started putting a timer on you can do that, guys. You know that you can put a timer on your social media account. So like for TikTok, it alerts me when I've been on it for 1 hour. And then I could either like listen and shut it down, or I can say like, I want 15 more minutes or whatever it is. I can say until tomorrow. I can completely ignore it, but at least it gives you the awareness. And honestly, most of the time, especially if it's at night before bed and that alarm goes off, I just put it down and I just put my phone away, because otherwise you can get really caught up in that. But also too, what you're seeing, the more time you spend on social media, the more exposed you are to maybe things that like, okay, you need to stay up to date with what's going on in the world. You know, there definitely is things that we want to stay up to date and aware about, but we don't want to over consume that stuff and allow it to affect our regular day to day when it doesn't need to. Right. So I think that's great. That's definitely great. Awesome. Okay. The other thing that I kind of mentioned it on the first call is binge eating can often also be a symptom to underlying mental health conditions. Could be related to like either untreated or part of like OCD, anxiety, depression, past trauma. So healing from past trauma, we obviously cannot help with that aspect. We can just bring awareness to it. But if there was something that's ever done to you, and honestly, guys, people also, trauma can be as simple as like when I was a kid, I was teased about my weight. That's trauma. It doesn't have to be, I think a lot of people think it has to be something horribly horrifying. And regardless of the level, it's still trauma and it still impacted you in some way. So speaking with a mental health professional is always encouraged. A lot of the people that are in the 6 months of food freedom program are also in therapy, and it's strongly encouraged, because there comes a place and a time where like we can give you the strategies, we can give you the tools, we can give you the awareness. But when, you know, there's certain issues there, we start to draw the connections of like, well, you know, the dinner table was really stressful. There was lots of yelling. There was lots of screaming. And that's why you have this poor relationship with food. And now every time you go to your family's house, you're triggered by it and it leads to binging. Like we can bring awareness to that, and we can still talk about strategies. But if you're seeing your family on a regular basis and they're constantly triggering you from your childhood of where it was really just like chaotic and volatile, you know, we can just listen, right? But a therapist can really help you go deeper and like help you understand why it is that you feel that way. And even when it comes to boundary setting in that aspect, maybe you don't need to see your family so much, right? Maybe there are things that can be done. So I just bring that up to say that it's depending how deep your issues are with your relationship with food and your body image, it's often a multidisciplinary approach. So I always want to be fully transparent in that, and that we can help to an extent, but always when, you know, a team is always going to be super powerful, right? Okay. And then the last thing, how do we binge less? We take care of ourselves. We need to be putting ourselves first. We need to learn to fill our cup first, because if we don't, basically binging becomes like an escape. It's like a moment of screw it, I don't care. It's a moment of solitude. It's a moment of, for some people, they genuinely enjoy the experience, maybe because the rest of their life is real boring. The rest of their life is the mundane, the routine. They're not doing anything that brings them passion, anything that fills up their cup. They're constantly taking care of other people, pouring out, but they're not getting that same energy in return, right? And that's not fair. For those of you who are here, I know women do this a lot, and it's not fair at all, okay? It's up to you to take charge of yourself and your life and not allow people to suck the energy dry from you. We call those energy vampires, right? You got to put your foot down. And if you expect to be able to do these things while you're constantly pouring into others and they're not pouring back into you, it's going to be a really rough road. It's going to be really, really hard. Okay. So I mean that in the nicest way possible. We got to take care of ourselves a little bit better.